Welcome to The Alarmists, Conspiracy Theories and Coffee. Today is an interesting episode. We have the great Gary Springer, who has been a trailblazer in the public relations world. His dad, John Springer, represented some of the greatest names in Hollywood, people like Marilyn Monroe, and Marlene Dietrich, and I can go on and on and on. Gary has done his own, he's created his own way, and is the master of so many different subjects and categories, and he's sort of the most universal person I've seen in this industry in quite a long time. Welcome, Gary Springer from Springer Public Relations. Hello.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Hey, Gary. Nice to see you, man.
It's good to see you as well. Haven't talked to you for a while, and I hope all is good.
We're both looking pretty good during this crazy upside-down pandemic.
Well, it's actually, for the last 5 years, I closed my office in Times Square in about 2015. I just realized I didn't need an office anymore. And I've been working from home. So while that's not unusual, given this whole pandemic thing, what is unusual is that I'm always also on a plane almost every 2 weeks. Yeah. And that I can't stand. I want to go someplace.
I know. I was having this conversation yesterday about, as a journalist, I've been a globetrotter. The closest globe I'm going. We're going to El living room. El backyardo.
I actually just wrote a letter today to some of the people I'm involved with on this one project that takes place in Egypt. Right? It's the El Gouna Film Festival. And I was in Egypt the last 2 years. I've been going to Egypt for the festival, and I wrote him back and I said, I just realized that the ugly Americans are invited to Egypt. It's one of the few countries we're allowed to go to. So please bring me over.
Are you gonna go?
I don't know. I mentioned it yesterday to this guy I'm working with. He said, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. Well, that puts a whole new light on it. You better write so-and-so and so-and-so and let them know.
How has, I work from home as well, so it's great that it's really not that different for me. What is different is the way I socialize, the way my family socializes. It's put, it just put a hamper on everything.
Well, yeah, that has just killed it.
How do you, what has changed for you, even though you're in your home like I am, what has changed for you besides being on an airplane going somewhere? How do you look at it all?
Well, I'm terribly bored Zooming.
Yeah, I hate Zoom.
The Zoom conversations or the conference calls where you have, 12 people on it, and it's just like, oh God. I put it on mute. I put my picture on, and I go off and have breakfast, and I listen to it in my earphone.
Yeah.
No, and it's like I haven't. I grew up in Manhattan. I worked there for once I came back from Hollywood. I worked in Manhattan for 30 years as a publicist, and I haven't been there since February. The last time I was in Manhattan was 3 hours. I had a luncheon on my way to Berlin for the Berlin Film Festival. And that was it. That was the last time I've been in New York. And it's now, 8 months later or something like that?
Yeah, March 3rd was my last day. Yep.
Yeah. I miss it. I miss friends, but I don't miss the city. And, I really don't. I live up in Westchester. I'm in the woods, and I just don't miss the city.
Yeah, I you know what? I'm living in the Hamptons, and being a parent and having a family definitely helps. It changes the way you look at everything, But I have actually gotten so much closer to my family, which is it's a strange thing to say, but we're I thought if we were on top of each other every single day, we would kill each other. It's been the opposite effect. Give the viewer a little thumbnail history about you, because you're pretty amazing. You're an author. You started doing acting. You come from Hollywood royalty. Your dad handled some of the greatest names in the history of Hollywood. Give the viewer a little snapshot of who Gary Springer really is.
Well, yeah, as I said, I grew up in Manhattan. I grew up in this business. My father was a film publicist.
John
Uh,
Springer. John Springer.
John Springer. He
Mhm.
was a film historian, and so my entire life revolved around movies and theater and entertainment. Um, Dad, quite fascinating. And we just started an Instagram. My sister and I just started an Instagram thing for the John Springer collection. He started when he was like 14 years old, collecting movie stills
Wow.
from if the theater finished playing the movie. He was from Rochester. He would go pick them up and take them in. We right now have 190,000, a collection of over 190,000 movie stills that I'm
Wow.
still adding to from my projects. A number of them have been digitized by Getty, and images, and that is, we're doing this on Instagram now. I just posted yesterday a beautiful picture of Carol Lombard for her birthday from the John Springer collection. So
That's great.
that, he was a movie fan from the earliest years. When he was 15, he won a national contest that brought him to New York City for the first time. And the first night he got there, he went out to the Paramount Theater because it was a Paramount contest. And his dates that night were Buddy Rogers and Mary Pickford. And then the next day, they took him on a tour of New York, and that night brought him to Radio City Music Hall. And his date that night was a girl who was only about 4 years older than he was, named Ginger Rogers.
Oh my God.
The next day, he went to
He
the
went on a
theater.
date with Ginger Rogers?
Well, she was his, yeah, it was a whole Paramount. It wasn't just him and Ginger.
No
And-
Fred? No Fred? Come on.
And the next day, they brought him to the theater, and they went out to lunch afterwards with the star, who was Tallulah Bankhead.
Oh my God.
And then that night, he was out with the woman he wrote the essay about, which won him this Paramount contest, Sylvia Sidney.
Oh.
And later in life, when he was a publicist, every one of those people were his clients.
Wow.
From when he was 15, he kept on, kept with them. But he had Marilyn Monroe, Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Marlene Dietrich, Myrna Loy, Henry Fonda, Robert Ryan, Robert Preston, Warren Beatty, Julie Christie, Natalie Wood, Mike Nichols, Yves Montand.
You've just recited the holy grail of Hollywood stars. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean,
we don't have that star power anymore.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I miss that.
I do too. It's a shame.
I miss getting dressed up. I miss going to the award shows when it was done in a respectful way. You see these old clips of the Academy Award parties where everybody's sitting there at their tables and they're dressed to the nines.
Well, and it's true. I mean, there still is glamour. I mean, the Academy Awards are still glamour. The Golden Globes are still glamour because it's a big party. The Golden Globes were funner than the Academy Awards, like what the Academy Awards used to be, which was just one big party.
Well, I think you find out who the real alcoholics are when the Golden Globes go on.
Oh, absolutely. But there's not the glamour. There's not the star system. There's not the glamour. There's not the and now with media and a lot of it being kind of trashy media, every wart that anybody has is flashed up, right in front of you. And back in the old days, all of that stuff was kept hidden. So
some things were better left unsaid.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes.
The mystique is not there as much as it used to be.
No. And you did some acting, and you've written some books. I mean, I turn on the episode of Jaws, and I'm like, oh my God.
Well, no, actually, I haven't written any books. That was my dad. That was my dad.
Oh,
he wrote.
Okay.
Besides being the PR in the film, he wrote actually the first coffee table book that was ever on the movies. There was no big size coffee table book. He wrote it. It was called All Talking, All Singing, All Dancing: A History of the Musical. And then his next book was The Fondas, Peter, Jane, Henry, Peter, and Jane. And again, there were no like films of books, films of Betty, films of none of that stuff.
Your
He
dad was
started
a
that
real
whole thing.
he was a real trailblazer, man. I
Yeah.
mean,
And he
unbelievable.
was also one of the first people to start the tribute series. There was no AFI galas. There were no, New York Film Festival salutes. Um, there was a guy in California named Albert Johnson who was at the Pacific Film Archive, I think, or the San Francisco Film Society. And he and my dad, both about the same time, started doing these tribute events. My dad did called the Legendary Ladies of the Movies, did it at a town hall in New York. This is like back in the late 60s, early 70s. The first one was Betty Davis.
Oh my God.
He would show like an hour or so of film clips, and there'd be an intermission. Then there'd be another 15 or 20 minutes of film clips ending with fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy night, and out walks Betty.
Wow.
And then the crowd goes wild, and but there were never things like that before. They never did it. And so he was one of the creators of that whole mystique. He did Betty, Lana Turner, Roz Russell, Myrna Loy, Sylvia Sidney, Joan Crawford.
Wow. So these
are all people I grew up with. So
as a kid, though, when you see your dad doing all this, did you know you were going to follow in his footsteps and be
not in the least?
So what was your impression when you were a 14-year-old kid?
I knew that I knew it was special. I knew that there was this glamour. I knew that there was this excitement about these people. My father my sisters and I would be doing our homework at home, and my father would come in and say, "Stop, got to come out and watch TV. Hank's on. Hank's doing the Grapes of Wrath speech." And it's like, how many people say, "Stop doing your homework and come watch TV"?
Yeah, come watch Henry Fonda.
Yeah. But I grew up as I said, Marilyn Monroe allegedly but I know it was my babysitter.
No, whoa. Monroe, Babysat, Gary Springer.
Yes, I can. And I can probably honestly say I'm one of the few guys in this conversation right now who's actually been in bed with Marilyn Monroe, because she used to come over to the house when she was living in New York and go out with my parents. And
so John, your dad is saying like, "Listen, Marilyn, this is Gary, my son. Can you keep an eye on him for a little while?"
Well, no. So what they would do was they would come in, and we would my sisters, both younger, would be sitting on the couch. We'd be sitting on the couch, and Marilyn would come in to pick, and go out there, like they'd be going out to dinner or some function or something like that. And then my mother would say, "Okay, girls, time to go to bed." And she and Marilyn would take the girls into their room and put them to bed. Then my mom would come out and say, "Okay, honey." And so I would go into bed, and my mother would be pulling down the shades, and Marilyn would be sitting on the edge of my bed. So I can honestly say I was in bed with Marilyn Monroe.
Did she sing you any lullabies, Gary?
That I don't recall. But I do remember one time she took myself and my two sisters to the park. Central Park, right? And it's 65th, 67th, and Fifth Avenue.
Right.
There's an entrance there. And there's that big rock. And so I just remember sitting on top of that rock with my two sisters and Marilyn. And my one sister was much younger, and she would be tottering off, and Marilyn was trying to make sure she didn't fall off the rock. But
do you realize what an amazing, that's amazing. I mean,
yeah, no, look, it's a fun story. It's a great
story.
But also the other good one, and this just shows that, these people, when I was growing up, I knew who they were, but it wasn't like awe-inspiring. When I was in first grade, what are you, 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old in first grade?
Right.
I used to go out my 7th floor window, go down the fire escape, 2 floors, go into the kitchen, take the dog around the block for a walk before I went to, walk down to 2 blocks to St. Vincent's on 65th Street. And that was Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward's dog. So they were my neighbors, and I walked. So they were my first official bosses. Paul and Joanne. Yeah.
You probably feel more normal around Hollywood glory than you do it with any. I'm probably boring for you.
Never, never. Now, it was a fascinating way to grow up, but I never thought I was going to follow in my father's footsteps. I never even planned on it. I mean, while I was in school, even when I was in, sixth, seventh, eighth grade and early years of high school while I was still in New York, I would work in my dad's office during the summers and, winter break, Christmas vacations and stuff. I always tried to work. He represented the New York Film Festival for the first 25 years of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to, try and work that because that was such a fun, because the stars coming in from all over the world and watching the movies. And I mean, I grew up watching foreign films. So, now subtitles, I can't get my daughter to watch a subtitled movie. And it's something that I grew up, doing from when I was so young.
And foreign movies are far more intelligent than American films by a mile.
Yeah, I mean, many American films are just ridiculous now. I mean, I'm not. You either love them or hate them. I'm not a sci-fi superhero.
What did Martin Scorsese, that
hero.
controversial remark he made about superhero movies not being films?
They're films. They're I mean, it's just you've got to you either love them or hate them, and I'm not one of the. I don't hate them. I just never got into them.
This week's podcast is supported by Free Lunch Coffee. Free Lunch Coffee is on a mission to end hunger from the lives of young children. There are children out there who really need our support, and it can be difficult and intimidating knowing where to start and how to help. When you buy one bag of Free Lunch Coffee, you're providing 10 meals to children in need, and Free Lunch Coffee gives away 50% of the money they make to end hunger in the lives of young children. How cool is that? Also, they have some amazing custom-made mugs and tumblers. Each mug provides 10 meals, and tumbler provides 20 meals to the children in need. I believe this could be a great Christmas gift, and Christmas is about the spirit of giving. You're not just buying gifts for your loved ones. You're also helping to end child hunger. Beyond a fantastic cause, Free Lunch Coffee has great coffee that's specialty grade, certified organic, and fair trade. Also, they're offering 100% money back guarantee for 30 days. So if you don't absolutely love their coffee, they'll give you a full refund. And you can keep the coffee too, so you've got nothing to lose. Free Lunch Coffee is offering a 10% discount to the loyal listeners of this podcast. Use coupon code AfterShock at checkout. Check it out at freelunchcoffee.com. See you there.
I was in high school. I was at a boarding school in upstate New York, and I was home for Christmas, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I was going to go to college for 4 years and then try and figure out what I wanted to do with
like
my
a
life.
lot of people, right? Sure.
And I was home and went to a New Year's Eve party with my mom and dad. That was being hosted by David Newman and Bob Benton. They wrote Bonnie and Clyde, which my father did the press on. He also represented Warren. And that night, I was a junior in high school. I was talking to some filmmaker, and we were having a great conversation. And I was doing the school play, one of the school plays. We did 3 a year, but the only reason I was doing it was so I could stay up past curfew and drink wine and smoke pot and do all those things.
Oh my God, you're normal.
Not because I wanted to be a great actor, but he had said, called me. My dad called me and said, Yvonne Passer really enjoyed speaking with you. He's doing a movie and he wants to talk to you about it. I said, well, I'm in school. I can't do it. He said, no. So I talked to Yvonne and he said, no, we're going to shoot in the summer because it's with Carol OConnor, who was doing All in the Family. So we were going to shoot during Carol's hiatus.
What film was this?
It was a movie called Law and Disorder with Carol OConnor and Ernest Borgnine.
I remember it.
And they were auxiliary cops on the streets of New York. And I was a punk kid smoking a joint and my hair was long. And the Borgnine tries to arrest me. And I just look at him and I go, fuck you. And that's all I say throughout the rest of the movie. I keep,
Such
you know,
prolific words.
oh, I studied. You know, method acting. I spent a lot of time in subways, looking at the mirror. You know, looking at my reflection in a subway mirror, going, "Fuck you, fuck you."
That's great.
And, you know, I still had no desire to be an actor.
So after being up close to them, it didn't sway
No,
you.
it was fun. It was fun. And then I went away to college as soon as we finished it.
And what did you major in college?
Well, theater and film.
Oh, of course.
But I only spent 12 weeks there because when I got there, somebody walked into one of the classes and somebody said, "Oh, it's the New York fucking actor," and I quit. I just said, "The hell with this." I'm not, yeah. So I came back to New York and I started working in my dad's office. I was taking classes at Hunter College, which was right across the street from my house. And I was working, you know, I was going to matriculate at Hunter and figure out what I was going to do. And then I was working for my dad, you know, we were at the New York Film Festival and it was the opening night of the festival. I was in my tuxedo, speaking of glamour. and
don't you miss that?
I do.
I'd do anything to wear a tux right now.
Well, I've gotten a little chubby for my tux. So
I got dressed up to throw the garbage out. That's how desperate I'm getting.
I know. But I ran into a guy who was one of the top ICM agents in New York at the opening night. He said, you know, I just saw a sneak of your movie Dog Day Afternoon. I mean, of Law and Disorder. Sorry. And he said, you know, you were good in that. Who's your agent? I said, oh, I don't have an agent. And he said, well, let me get you. Actually, no, that's the wrong story.
All right, cut.
Let me go back.
Take two.
So anyway, so I was back in New York after dropping out of Elmira because I didn't like the attitude. New York fucking actor indeed. I did one movie where I said, fuck you 12 times, but still. But at the cast and crew screening that following May, the casting director said, you know, you were good in this. We're doing another movie that you might be right for. Who's your agent? I said, I don't have an agent. I've been away. You know, I've been in college. He said, well, come down and try out for it. And I did. And it was Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino. And I played Pacino's partner. I was the third bank robber. It was John Cazale, Al Pacino, and myself.
Oh my God! Oh my God! You got to work with John Cazale and Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon?
Yeah. It was really
he's considered Cazale is considered one of the greatest actors ever,
and one of the nicest human beings ever.
So did you even realize what you were getting to do? I mean, that is like.
Of course I did.
So now now it's hitting you. You're older now. You have a couple of films.
And then I liked all of a sudden what I really liked was not the acting part of it. I loved the crew because the camaraderie of all those guys, together. And half the people who were on the Law and Disorder crew were also on the Dog Day crew. And so it was just, these guys would go from movie to movie. And I said, that's what I really want to do is get, on the crew things. So I had signed up to be a Directors Guild apprentice, but it didn't start till the following March. And this was now May,
almost 10 months.
So almost 10 months.
Yeah.
So I knew that one of my father's, people my father was involved with starting another movie in New York. And I called him up and I said, look, I know you're doing this. I'd love to work on your on the production team. And he said, well, but you just did Dog Day Afternoon and and Law and Disorder. And I said, I know, but I really want to do the crew thing. So I spent like 6 months working as a production assistant on Taxi Driver.
Wow.
With Marty Scorsese.
Wow. Oh my God. You realize the things that you've gotten to do?
Yeah, I do.
I'm telling you,
I know.
You are so amazingly lucky. This is like iconic shit that you've gotten to do. Working on the production of Taxi Driver, being on the same set as the third bank robber in Dog Day Afternoon, working with Carol OConnor, who's my hero. All right, so
Yeah.
you said "fuck you." Okay, that was your first word on screen. Big
But
deal.
still, it was anyway. So I wound up getting an agent. At the New York Film Festival, and I told the guy. He said, "Who's your agent?" I said, "I don't have one, but I'm going to go through the Directors Guild." He said, "Well, we can still send you out. You can make some money." So I signed with ICM, and 2 weeks later, they got me a film, a PBS Great Performances or something like that, called Bernice Bobs Her Hair, with Shelley Duvall and Bud Cort.
I remember this
And
film.
we shot it down in Savannah, Georgia in November. And Shelley came back to New York over Christmas. And we were out one night, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm nothing really until February, when I'm going to go back to college." And she said, "Why don't you come out and stay with my boyfriend and I?" Her boyfriend Patrick, who I met because he was on the set. And they said, "Come out and stay with us for a while." So I wound up, I said, "Well, look, my agent wants me to go to Hollywood to meet everybody there." So I wound up, a couple days after right after New Year's in 1975.
Wow.
Went, flew out to California with Patrick and Shelley, and I wound up spending the next 9 years out there.
Because of that trip. Wow.
Well, I never came back to New York. I met the agents out there. I started working right away. I actually lived with Patrick and Shelley until July, and then Shelley and I got a place in West Hollywood for about 4 months. That all of a sudden, we also had another roommate, which is Pat Ast. You remember the old Andy Warhol actress?
Sure.
So
sure.
and then Shelley went to New York to do Annie Hall, wound up meeting Paul Simon and calling us up and said, "Look, I'm selling the house. I'm going to move back to New York and live with Paul." So all of a sudden, I was on my own in Hollywood, and
That's amazing.
I
She traded you in for Paul.
I
That's
know.
amazing.
I can't sing. I don't have.
No. It's a bridge
But,
over troubled water.
So I stayed. I stayed in Hollywood, and I stayed working.
So you spent a lot of time as an actor, much more than I realized. How many years did you take? Did you put in?
Well, I started Law and Disorder was in 1972, and I moved back from Hollywood in 1982. So I did it off and on for 10 years. And I was in the big movie. I did a couple of movies. I starred in a film that was my film. It was called Hometown USA, that Max Baer, Jethro from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Sure.
And it was terrible. It was a ripoff of American Graffiti. I basically wore the same wardrobe that Richard Dreyfuss wore. My name was Rodney C. Duckworth, the rodent, and I was this, stupid kid who would get into trouble but anyway, it was fun. But I also spent 11 months working on Jaws 2. I was the lead teenager in Jaws 2.
I just watched it again. I'm telling you, when I see you there, I'm like, I'm looking at this actor going, that can't be Gary, is it? Oh my God, it is Gary.
Look, it was, again, I never really wanted to be an actor, but I wound up having a very, very nice, brief, career, 10 years.
But it gives you an insight, but it gives you an insight on the clients that, famous clients.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Jesse. When I started, representing, I eventually moved back to New York and started working with my dad because, I got married to a woman I met, on Martha's Vineyard while we were doing Jaws 2, and she didn't like Hollywood, and we wound up moving back to New York. But as we were working on theater projects or, film projects or with personalities, I also had that sensibility when I was working with the actors in those projects. So it really
But
did help.
everything that you've done seems to have led to the next phase of your life or to another chapter in your life, which is pretty amazing how you've managed to do that.
It has flowed nicely.
Now, before we're going to have to wrap this up soon, but I wanted you to talk about the Hamptons Film Festival because you've been doing that for quite a while. And
well, I'm actually not representing the Hamptons anymore, but I did represent it for 15 years. I started representing the Hamptons in '97,
Mhm.
and I was the publicist for it until about 2012.
Wow.
My, not just me, I had my office, but because something you can't do by yourself, it's just such a massive. But I love working on the film festivals. I also do the Sarasota Film Festival, which I
Mhm.
did for 14 years. Um, I'm still consulting on the Virginia Film Festival down in Charlottesville. Um, and I take a lot of films to festivals. I work with this organization. As I was telling you, I've been going to El Gouna in Egypt, which is a festival on the Red Sea for the last couple of years, looking for young filmmakers, emerging talent. That this organization I work with, the International Emerging Film Talent Association, IEFTA, which is based in Monaco, we support, mentor young filmmakers from emerging economies.
That's
So we're
great.
doing a lot of work with Ethiopia, with Egypt, with Bangladesh. I've got a movie right now that I'm working on, that helping mentoring a first-time filmmaker from Bangladesh, and it's one of the most gorgeous, beautiful movies I've ever seen.
But that's amazing.
Well,
You're finding talent in places that a lot of people wouldn't even think to look unless you really know.
wouldn't even think
Yeah.
to look. And Bangladesh has got a lot of talent. I was out there for a year ago for the Dhaka Film Festival.
Wow.
I was supposed to be there last month for the Dhaka Doc Lab, but
Wow.
couldn't travel.
So all these wonderful places that you get to go and you're grounded, it's got to be driving you crazy.
Going back to what we started with in the beginning, yes, it is driving me crazy. I mean,
Wow.
I should have. I was supposed to go to Durban in South Africa. I've never been to Durban.
I've been to Durban,
Never been
believe it
to,
or not.
and I was supposed to go there for the festival in early September, but
Wow.
we did it all online. Like we did the Marché de Film from Cannes. We did the entire thing in June. It was online. It was 10 days or
Wow.
so of zooming and watching movies and watching pitches from filmmakers.
When this
And
is when this is over, I hope I never have to Zoom again. I am
I
zoomed out.
I'm afraid that I think it's gonna, it's gonna happen a lot now. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the whole virtual, this announcement that just came on that Regal Cinemas is not going to
Yeah.
open at all anymore. They're the second biggest movie chain in the U.S.
AMC is on the is been whispered that it might not make it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I'm working on. I've got a film that opened on Friday that we're actually open in theaters in about 20 theaters around the country, but we're also in virtual in numerous theaters. It's a thing called virtual cinema, where instead of the movies going on to Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or whatever, your local art house, like the Lemleys in LA, say, or the Hamptons Film Festival, I think that they've been sponsoring some at some of their theaters, will take a film and advertise it just like they do a regular film where people can watch it in the theaters, but they'll watch it on their video. And the people pay like $12. The
wow.
theater gets six, the exhibitor gets some, the filmmaker gets some. So as
Wow.
opposed to just selling it out for general, you know, streaming on television, it actually is almost like the old exhibitor distributor
Wow.
model.
It's taking away, I mean, there's nothing better than being in a movie theater. Let's face it.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, you can have the best home surround sound, the best little theater you've created in your house, but being in that theater is exhilarating, especially for some of the openings, and you know it better than anybody. And I can't wait for that day to come back. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
I'm
And
afraid not. I'm especially in New York and Los Angeles and some of the other
yeah,
big markets. And a lot of these distributors, need New York or Los Angeles.
yeah.
They can't do it. Some of the bigger companies can't do it just on virtual, and some of the smaller little venues around the country that are open.
Gary Springer, thank you so much for coming on The Alarmist today. It was really great talking with you.
Absolutely. I had a good time.
Yeah, man. You Marilyn Monroe babysat you. I'm going to lose sleep tonight. You're a great man, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I
All
really
right.
appreciate
All right, man. To be continued.
it. You bet.
All right. Bye-bye.